Call me crazy, but I never imagined I would have seen an animal like this in my life. I was hiking out in the backwoods of Ohio. I will not disclose further information about location for obvious reasons. This is when I noticed a rustling in the bush. When I looked closer, I saw it move. In my shock, I dropped my phone and nearly jumped over a tree to make myself appear as big as possible. It was a bipedal wolf. This thing was absolutely colossal sized. As soon as it noticed me, it bared its teeth and growled something terrible, like nothing I've ever heard before or since. It's hard to describe how frightening this experience was, really. The animal definitely had evil intentions, or so it appeared. Only after all these years could I even come close to describing what this beast looked like. Even though the creature was covered from head to toe in a dark, mangy kind of fur, with patches of disgusting skin, it had a lot of features that seemed pointed and sharp. Its nose, for example, was sharp and angular, ears that were swept back and looked more like horns than anything else. The fur on its cheeks were swept back as well, giving it the appearance of spikes. Claws so long that it's honestly a wonder they didn't break off during everyday use. They were probably as dense and hard as a knife. The monster that they were attached to didn't look like it had any real use for finesse. It had all the earth tone colorings you would expect from any wildlife dog, but some of the darker aspects of the fur kind of created lines around the eyes and cheeks, like you would see in some species of cats, or so it reminded me. It was both wild and sophisticated, mundane and occult. The eyes had a withering effect on me when I caught sight of them. The only real way I can describe the faint lighting coming from them is the way the light behaves when you place a candle instead of a jack-o'-lantern. The way it pulses and flickers. I saw more than just one light when I looked into these things' eyes. I saw something even worse. Intelligence. And then, in that moment, when I was trying to make myself look like I could hold on my own, I saw amusement. It tilted its head, the way a confused dog might, but there's no confusion anywhere in its eyes. My bladder ultimately releasing, and somehow I knew that it understood that I was completely terrified out of my wits. Like a baboon singled out by a lion, my brain commanded me to do one thing, and one thing only: run. I only looked back once. The monster was still just standing there, and it was either surprised that I even saw a point in running, or it was letting me get a head start. I was running so fast and so hard that when I tripped over a fallen log, I went sailing through the air, face planting so hard that I saw stars. But the adrenaline caught me from feeling my injuries, and I continued running at a respectable speed with a limp. After a while, my brain started telling me that I was running on a ruined ankle. The fact that it was penetrating my survival mechanisms told me that it would truly not last much longer. I looked behind me for only a second time in the pursuit, and my heart sank when I saw that this thing had no trouble keeping up with me. It was barely even straining. I could hear its footsteps slapping the forest floor. It's like it was moving in for the kill. What followed probably lasted less than 3 seconds, but I felt the whole thing happen in slow motion. My arms pulled up the side of the trunk. A great chunk of it came off in my hands, worn away over the years of presence of termites and other things. My body swung, anchored only by the other arm. In my new position, I could appreciate the fact that the walking wolf creature had sprung for the kill, its mouth wide open like a fiery crocodile, coming straight for my face. If I'd only been a half-second slower, this large, jagged chunk of wood in my other hand would not have found its way down the creature's throat. The monster still slammed into me knocked me down from the tree. But its tension had been completely stolen by the wood, which was now lodged in the space where my flesh had meant to be. It appeared to roll over in a kneeling position, coughing and hacking. The impracticality of its long claws became apparent, as its long nails have no use to getting the wood to ease out of its throat, and it couldn't do much of anything without injuring itself. It finally shook its head, but the force wasn't enough to free the wood. And the pain, the blinding terror, and the exhaustion, it still entered my mind to help this thing, but only for a split second. The pain in my ankle was like being electrocuted. I got up and fled, as fast as I could. I don't know what I did to sour my luck so bad that day. The only reason I was able to get medical attention was because I had blindly hobbled out onto the road when a patrolling park ranger hit me with his Jeep. That's what got me a bad shoulder and a broken collarbone. Hope you enjoyed this story. I'm still living with the residuals. Driving back in the evening, my girlfriend, who was sitting in the passenger seat next to me, pointed out that she could see this large upright dog in the distance. I laughed at her, saying dogs don't walk on their hind legs, but as she pointed and got me to look, I saw what she was talking about. I pulled over, stopped the car to take a photograph, but before I managed to get it out of my pocket, the dog was already sprinting up towards us. The fear on my girlfriend's face as she turned around in her seat, looking at the beast, was something I will never forget. The speed at which the monster had closed the distance between us was almost supernatural. The closer it got, the more I could appreciate just how much I underestimated its size. I'm far away, and I thought I could have easily been a man in a Halloween costume. But this thing was so much taller. I was convinced I was looking at the real deal, and no man in a costume would have thrown itself against the passenger side window with such force that cracks wept through the glass. My girlfriend's screaming filled the cab. I was trying to get the car started as much as possible to get away from this thing. All too slowly, the car started and lost forward as I hammered the accelerator. I did this just in time to clip the sides of two more of these creatures that had been coming towards us head on. They were just a little too slow, jumping out of the way, and either side of the front of the car likely gave two of these monsters an old man hip. I fishtailed for a few seconds, but straightened out the car. We were now cruising at a steady speed, apparently fast enough to leave these things behind. I question this, because when the first one had made contact with the vehicle, it was like a bolt of lightning, ninja fast. My girlfriend was in hysterics. I unfortunately was unable to calm her down. I regret to say that I let the moment get to me, and I kind of barked at her a bit. That didn't help anything. I almost considered taking her to the hospital to make sure she wasn't going to have a heart attack. She told me that she didn't want to go anywhere except home with me. She didn't want to go to her place. She did not want to go to her parents' place. She did not want to go to the hospital. She just wanted to be near me, her safety. I don't think she thought that statement through. I live out in the sticks. Coyotes, bears, and very likely wolf monsters are probably going to be my next door neighbors. Her home was very much in the city, but she didn't live with any roommates or anything. So naturally it would make sense that she didn't want to be alone. So I didn't argue. As soon as I could see and think straight, I headed home. I had to close the gate behind myself. I was very self-conscious when I got out of the car and opened the gate for us. I killed the motor and listened for a long time with the windows cracked. I didn't dare move my girlfriend's window. It was so badly damaged. I was afraid it would fall to pieces. Neither of one of us wanted to be the first one to get out of the car. I thought of my dad's rifle that I had in pieces. I promised that I would keep it disassembled unless I absolutely needed it. He wanted to pass it on to me, but he also wanted to make sure that no kids or company of mine would accidentally shoot themselves. At length, we both get out of the car, and I swear that as soon as I shut my door, I heard the strangest, most blood-chilling howl I have ever heard roll to me from somewhere in the distance. It was like faraway thunder, made by something big. You could hear it miles away. My girlfriend began whimpering. I urged her not to scream, for fear we would be heard. Deep down, I knew it was these monsters, probably having razor-sharp instincts. We got inside, and I made her comfortable on the couch, or as comfortable as possible under the circumstances. I hit up Google and started looking at images of werewolves and lycans and other things. The problem was that these things defied the stereotypical picture of a werewolf. If the Egyptian god of death, Anubis, had been stripped of his official clothing, then that is exactly what we would have saw. No wild fur. They were sleek and shiny, tall and short, smooth, like black onyx stone. I got busy putting together my father's rifle. I didn't think I'd actually ever have to put it together, so I experienced much frustration as I struggled to remember exactly what went where. In an instant, my blood ran cold when I heard that same howling from before. I had turned on the TV for my girlfriend, which meant that the howling was louder than the TV itself. That meant that this thing had gotten closer. Something told me that I had a very long night ahead of me. I told my girlfriend that she could have my bed, and that I wasn't going to be falling asleep anytime soon. The thing is, she wasn't going to be sleeping either. She was so shaken up and her eyes were wide open constantly, as if in perpetual shock. Her exhaustion eventually caught up with her, dozing off in front of the television. I was surprised she didn't wake up when, in the middle of the night, I heard the sound of shattering glass. My instincts screamed that these monsters had found the house that they were breaking through. I found, however, that the monsters were actually attacking the car instead of the house. Whatever scent they had locked onto, it led them to our vehicle. They finished shattering my girlfriend's passenger side window, followed by the windshield. 3 towering, sleek bodies poking their faces all throughout the interior. I could still see their eyes glowing. I didn't find whatever they were looking for, so they began tearing it up. Had we really looked out that much? Or did they really lock onto the scent of the car and not us? I don't know. They saw us, but it's not us that they smelt in this first encounter. Thankfully, they never came back, but my girlfriend and I are still very much traumatized from the whole incident.